everybody. Welcome back to the C programming tutorial. In the last session we were looking into the two-dimensional arrays, and we also looked into some of the examples that how we could go about programming, say for example addition of two matrices or transpose of a matrix. And in today's session we will just look into what a matrix multiplication is and look into the basic concept how this matrix multiplication could be done, and then the programming part of it. To understand what matrix multiplication is, say for example you have two matrices A and B. Of course the order of the matrix is important. So in case we have matrix A of order 2 cross 3 and matrix B of order say 3 cross 2, then the matrix multiplication A into B is possible. If otherwise you have A is equal to 2 cross 3 and B is equal to 2 cross 2, then the matrix multiplication, that is A into B, now it's not possible. That is to say that the two matrices must be conformable for the multiplication to happen. So what is this matrix conformity? It is the number of columns of the first matrix should be equal to the number of rows of the second matrix. So here we had earlier 3 and 3, which was same. Say if you have taken n cross n and p cross q, we had n is equal to p, so the matrix was conformable and multiplication could be performed. But here as we see, the number of columns of the first matrix and the number of rows of the second matrix is not equal, so we cannot perform a multiplication on these two matrices. So that is one condition, the basic condition that we are going to check. After inputting the order of these two matrices, we will check whether the columns is equal to the rows of the second matrix. If it is so, then we continue to perform the matrix multiplication part. Otherwise, we simply exit out of the program. Next, suppose we have a 2 cross 3 matrix and a 3 cross 2 matrix, where we call this as A and this as B. For a simple example, I could take it as say 2, 2, that is the A matrix, and that is the B matrix. Now to perform matrix multiplication, we know that the row elements are going to be multiplied with the column elements of the first row are going to be multiplied with the row elements of the first column and then the second column, so on. And the sum of this will be the first element that has to be placed in our resultant matrix. So how do we go about this? We have, that is 2 into 3 plus 2 into 3 plus 2 into 3. That happens to be the first element in our resultant matrix, say C. So we are performing 2 into 3 plus 2 into 3 plus 2 into 3. So that will be the first, that is C of 0 comma 0 element in the resultant matrix. So this keeps repeating. The first row itself then is going to be processed with the second column element of the second matrix. So here you get a 2 cross 3 again plus 2 into 3 plus 2 into 3 as the first row second element of the resultant matrix. So this happens until we are going to exhaust with the number of columns in the second matrix. So until then the row remains the same. So that is why every time we need to process, that is the matrix multiplication, we need 3 loops over here. One is to manage with the row, that is these rows, and another loop is to manage with the columns of the second matrix, that is these columns, and another loop to manage with this row with different column elements and this column with different row elements. So here the row and column elements together, we are going to have one more loop. So finally our resultant matrix will be of which order? Suppose we have a 2 cross 3 matrix and 3 cross 2 matrix which is multiplied, we get a 2 cross 2 matrix as the resultant matrix. So here a 2 cross 2 matrix. Now we will just look into what these 3 loops could be taken as. Suppose I have the control variables I, j and k for these 3 loops. I can say for I is equal to 0, I less than, that is if I have a m cross n and a p cross q matrix, then it could be m and I plus plus, which I am incrementing, and then the j loop, that is for j is equal to j less than q and j plus plus, and then another loop, that is for k is equal to 0, k less than, that is these, any of these elements we can take because these two will be equal. So I will take it as n and k plus plus. And here what I am trying to find is, say I have a variable called sum which would be earlier initialized to 0. So I would say sum is equal to sum plus. If I am calling this matrix A and this as matrix B, I will say A of I comma k into B of k comma j. So here you see the row remains the same because I is an outer loop over here, and j remains the same until the second element, the second matrix columns are exhausted. So the the j loop is in the second, that is the intermediate level, and the k loop is the final or the innermost loop which happens to keep changing its value. So every time I take an element, I am changing the element, that is the column wise in the first matrix. Say I had this 2 2 2, so I am changing the first column, that is the first row, the first column, the second column and the third column. So this keeps changing, and now here in the second matrix I am considering the column, that is in the second matrix I had 3 3 3. So here it is the same column but different rows. So that is why I am changing the values of rows over here, that is the first time it would be this, the second time, the third time, like this. So that is why the column keeps changing for the first matrix and the row keeps changing for the second matrix. So that is a simple logic, and before this I need to initialize my, say C of j is equal to 0, and then I am going to put C of j is equal to sum. Okay, so this is a simple logic where, but when we see that there are number of loops, so that leads to often confusion, but just try to understand this key step over here. We will just look into the program. Here I as I told you, we have three matrices. One is the A matrix, the B matrix and the C matrix. C happens to be the resultant matrix. And we are making use of those three control variables I, J and K. And we have a sum variable which we are going to compute the sum and then finally put it in the resultant matrix, and which is also initialized to 0. And then we have M, N and P, Q, which are going to be taken as the order of the matrices. So, in the beginning we are going to enter the order of both the matrices. So, M and N, P and Q are going to be accepted by the user. And after accepting this, we are going to check for the matrix conformity. So, the number of columns in the first matrix should be equal to the number of rows in the second matrix. So, that is why we have if N not equal to P. That is, if it is not equal to, then what is the action that has to be taken? We just say that matrix multiplication is not possible, and then we are just coming out of the condition, that is out of the program, by saying exit function. So, in the C programming, you know that whenever we are using functions, these functions should be supported by the respective header files. So, here as we are using the exit function over here, this exit function is going to be supported by the standard library file. So, I am also including standard stdlib.h, that is standard library header file. So, that finishes, that is when the number of columns and number of rows of the first and the second matrix respectively is not equal, then matrix multiplication is not possible. Next, if that condition is satisfied, then we have to go across the matrix multiplication process. So, now we need to accept those two matrices. So, to accept the matrices, we know that we have two for loops. So, one for the rows and the other for the columns. So, here for I is equal to 0 till m and j is equal to 0 till n, I am accepting the first matrix, that is A of I j. The same way I am also accepting the second matrix, that is B of I j. And after that I am also printing those two matrices in the matrix form, that is row wise, whatever the depending on the order of the matrix. So, after printing those two matrices, we now come into that major part, that is how we go about with the matrix multiplication. So, as I told you, we have those two loops, that is I and j loops, which are going to be dealing with the rows and the columns respectively. And then we also have this k loop over here. So, before this k loop, we are initializing the sum variable. So, every time the sum would have some value, so that has to be again reset to a 0. And these three steps, as you see, that is for I is equal to, j is equal to and C of ij is equal to 0, it is simply to take a precaution that the resultant matrix does not have any other values. So, as we understand these array values, if we are going to create and not initialize them, then they would contain some garbage values. So, in order to avoid all that, we simply initialize those values, that is C of ij is equal to 0, that is we are resetting or initializing it. After that, as I told you, for the matrix multiplication we have these two loops and then sum is equal to 0 and k, that is k will be terminating till the number of columns of the first matrix or number of rows of the second matrix, which happens to be the same. So, here we have sum plus I of k into b of kj. So, as k is the innermost loop, this keeps changing until it is exhausted. So, we are dealing with the first row different column numbers of the first matrix, and in the second matrix it is the same column, that is j, and different rows over here. As we know that the first subscript always talks about the row and the second subscript always talks about the column. So, that is why this is happening over here. After that, I am assigning that particular sum value to C of ij, which happens to now be the first element, that is C of 0, 0. So, this keeps repeating until my j and the I loop are exhausted. So after this completion, we end up by printing the resultant matrix, that is the multiplication of two matrices is. We will just execute this program and see how the output would be displayed. Say I gave a 2 cross 3 matrix, and again my second matrix also as a 2 cross 3 matrix. It is giving out a message that matrix multiplication is not possible. Column of the first matrix must be the same as row of the second matrix. So as I have given 2 cross 3, 2 cross 3, we do not have that matching factor. So matrix multiplication is not possible in that case. Suppose I give a valid value, say 2 cross 3 and a 3 cross 2 matrix. It asks for the user to enter the first matrix. So I will just enter the values, say 2. We know that the maximum number of elements this matrix could accept is 2 into 3, that is 6 elements. So I will enter all the 6 elements over here, and for the second matrix too I will enter 6 elements, which also happens to be 6, that is 3 into 2. So we have the first matrix that is being printed as 2, 2, 2, that is it is a 2 cross 3 matrix, and the second matrix it is a 3 cross 2 matrix. So the multiplication of these two matrices would result in this. Yes. Take a look back, that is how we enter the matrix elements. After entering these matrix elements, we are printing the matrix elements. While we are printing, we are going to make use of this printf new line character, so that after every row element it goes to the next new line. This we had discussed in the previous session. And now to perform the actual matrix multiplication, this is the module. So here we are using 3 loops. Here we are using the 3 loops, 2 loops for the rows and the columns, and the third loop to take the first row different columns, first column different columns, different rows. So that way we are using these 3 loops with a sum variable which is initialized in between. So now after this, what a 2-dimensional array is, we are getting into the last part of this topic, that is a null terminated string. So basically what is a string? A string is nothing but a array of characters. So it is a list of characters which could be stored sequentially in the memory locations. So here it is a character string stored as an array containing the characters, and always this string must be terminated by a delimiter. A delimiter is some special symbol that marks the end of the string, so that whenever the system is processing a string, it should know when actually that string ends. So that is why this delimiter is a null character which the compiler itself assigns to every string at the end. So null terminated or a string is an array of characters, and the length or end of a C string is found by searching for the first null byte. So every time keep in mind, we cannot have a null character as a part of the string. If it is a part of the string, then the system is going to assume that it is the end of the string. How it is going to be represented in the memory? Say for example, you have a name as an array, and since we have taken the data type as character, it is a character of array. It is an array of characters which is otherwise called as a string, and we are assigning a value to it, that is computer, Here computer happens to be of 8 characters, and by default the last character which is going to be affixed to this would be the null character. So, the length of this particular array name would be 9, that is inclusive of this null character over here. So, as we have not specified any length, any size of the array over here. So, the actual data is 8 characters plus this null character says that the size of this array now becomes 9 characters or 9 bytes, because a character occupies just 1 byte of memory location. Now, we will just have a recap of the whole thing what we have seen till now, that is starting from the decision making and branching statements and also the arrays, that is a single dimensional array or the 2-dimensional arrays. We will just have a recap about these two topics just to reinforce our understanding. Okay. So, generally the students would have the tendency that if the topics are being covered in the question and answer format, the understanding would be more. So, that is why I have been presenting this in the form of a questionnaire with respective answers. So, here you have the decision making control statements. As we know that we have 3 basic decision making control statements, and they are of the forms the if statement, the if else statement and the nested if statements. And the syntax for each of these statements are, you have if condition statement. So, the statement could be a single statement or it could be multiple statements. So, if the condition happens to be true, the statements are going to be executed, otherwise it is simply the control is going to come out of the if block. The other variation of the if statement is if condition, you have statements, then else, again statements. So, these statements, even if they are simple statements or compound statements, just have a practice of enclosing them with a flat brace like this. So, the programmer or the reader would not have any confusions. So, here what happens, if condition is true, then the first part of the statement would be executed, that is statement 1 and statement 2. If the condition happens to become false, the else part would be executed. So, statement 3 and statement 4 would be executed. So, either of these would be executed in case where we are using the if else structure. Then we have the nested if structure. In the nested if structure, as you see, you have if condition 1, if condition 2, and then following that you have statement 1 and statement 2. So, here what happens is, if condition 1 is true, then condition 2 is going to be checked. So, here condition 1 becomes true, then it goes to the following statement, that is checks with the condition 2. If condition 2 also happens to be true, then statement 1 is going to be executed. Otherwise, that is if condition 2 happens to become false, then statement 2 is going to be executed. Suppose if condition 1 itself becomes false, then what happens? It is simply coming out of the if block, that is the control would be transferred out of the if block. Next you have the switch statement. The switch statement, as we know, we are going to use it in case where we have multiple options, that is we need to choose among multiple options. Then rather than having many if else structure, then we could have a switch statement which would be much easier. So, it allows a variable to be tested for equality against a list of values. So, here you see one example, we have the keyword switch with the expression over here. This expression would always yield into some integer or a character or a floating point, whichever the switch case values we have taken, it would be of the same type. So, here as we have told case A is a character over here. So, it is understood that grade would be a character itself. So, here switch, grade, and then we have several switch case values over here, that is case A, case B, case C and default. So, what happens over here is when this switch expression is given, it is going to be matched with the different case values over here. At any point of time it is going to match with these values, then the respective statement would be executed. So, assume that if grade is equal to A right now, then since it matches with this switch case value, the respective statement, that is print excellent, would be executed. And since we have a break statement over here, the control is going to be transferred out of your switch block. Now, suppose grade happens to be B. So, what happens? It gets into this case, and as this case does not have any statements, there is a null statement, and it also does not have a break statement. So, since break is not there, the control will just seep into the next case value, irrespective of what that particular case value is. So, here it is going to execute its respective statement. So, it is going to print well done in that case, when, that is when grade is equal to B, well done is going to be printed. If grade is equal to C, then also this statement is going to be executed. Why that has happened is because we have not used a break statement in this particular switch case value, and the default statement is going to be executed in case where this particular switch expression does not match with any of the switch case values. So, the same explanation has been given over here, that is if a break is specified after the execution of the corresponding statement, then control is transferred out of the switch block. And in case there is no match found, then the default statement is executed. Say for example, if you have given grade is equal to E, then there is no match with any of these case values, then the default statement would be executed. Next, generally these are the typical questions that we could expect in a C programming kind, that is what is the understanding that we have got between these loop structures. That is, we have to make a comparison between a while and a do while. So, as we know, a while loop is always an entry controlled loop. So, why do we say that it is an entry controlled loop is we are going to have the condition specified before the statement, that is the loop body is specified. So, the control is always checked, the control is always there before the loop body is being executed. And in case of a do while loop, it is an exit controlled loop, that is the loop body is already given before, and after that the while condition is going to be checked, that is the condition is checked. So, what is the major difference between the while and the do while? You see, in case of a while loop, if the condition happens to become false at the first attempt itself, then the statement is never executed. But what happens in do while loop is, as we have as we have specified the loop body first, the loop body is executed and then the condition is checked. So, if the condition happens to become false even for the first attempt, the loop body has already been executed. So, a minimum number of once the loop body is going to be executed in case of a do while loop, but that does not happen in case of a while loop. So, here as you see, the loop control variable must be initialized first, and after that the condition of the loop will be checked in case of a while loop. And if the condition of the loop is set to false at the beginning, the loop will not execute even for a single time. And in case of a do while loop, the body of the loop is placed before the control statement of the loop, that is the control is put at the end, So, the conditional expression appears at the end of the loop. So, the loop body is always executed once irrespective of the condition. So, here an example for a similar example in both cases, that is, in case of a while loop we are putting the condition first. So, if the condition happens to be true, then the loop body is executed, and in case of a do while loop we are putting the body of the loop first and then we are putting the condition. Both these program codes would yield the same result, but only thing, based on this condition, this would be executed once, at least once. Next we have the for statement. What is the syntax for this for statement and how does it execute? That is, the syntax for the for statement would be for the initial condition, the termination condition and the increment part. Following this we have the statement part. Again here you could have a single statement or you could have multiple statements, although do not forget to put a flower brace for either case. So, what happens over here, that is how does the execution happen in case of the for loop, that is the initiation step is executed first, that is the control variable will be initialized with certain value, and this step allows you to declare and initialize any loop control variables. Need not be that we can have only one loop control variable, you can have several control variables in your first part. Next, the condition is evaluated, that is, as we have initialized for the initialized with a value for the control variable, we are next checking the condition whether it meets the condition. So, the middle part is going to be checked. If it is true, the body of the loop is executed. If it is false, the body of the loop does not execute and the flow of control jumps to the next statement. And after the body of the loop is executed once, then what happens? It directly goes to the increment part. After incrementing the control variable, it again gets back to the middle thing, that is the condition checking. If the condition checking happens to be true, then it gets back to the statement part, that is the loop body. That is, to see over here, you have first time this going to be executed, next this is going to be executed. If this happens to become true, then the statements are going to be executed. After the completion of these execution of these statements, then the control is transferred to the increment part. After incrementing, it again gets back to the condition checking. If it is true, gets back to the statement. So, hereafter this becomes a cycle. So, after the completion of statement execution, it goes to the increment part, condition, statement, increment, condition and statement, so on, until this condition becomes false. So, one example for this, that is for the initiation, the termination and the increment, and we are printing the value of a. So, here a is first initialized to 10 and it goes on till less than 20. So, what would be the result of this? The values of a, that is, it would be printed so many times from values 10 to 19. Then the loop control statements, that is, we have three different loop control statements. They are the break, the continue and the go to statements. You have the break statement appearing at two places, one at the switch statement and the other at the loop statement. So, what happens when we are going to use a break statement? In either case, it is going to just abort the execution and transfer the control out of the corresponding block. So, here as you see, it terminates the loop or switch statement and transfers execution to the statement immediately following the loop or the switch, that is the break statement. Now, coming to the continue statement, it causes the loop to skip the remainder of its body and immediately checks the condition before the next iteration begins. So, it means to say that whenever we are using the continue statement, the current iteration of the loop is going to be suspended and it is going to continue with the next iteration. But before the next iteration is going to start, the condition is going to be checked. If the condition results true, then the iteration is going to be continued. Then the go to statement. Go to statement is an unconditional statement without checking any condition. It simply transfers control to different parts of the program, that is depending on where that particular label we have used. That is, whenever we use a go to, it is a mandatory that we are going to have a label, and that label should be given elsewhere in the program, so that whenever we say go to label, wherever this label is there in the program, it just jumps into that particular part. It could be either before or after that particular go to statement. Next you have, how do you differentiate break and continue? That is, the continue always forces the next iteration of the loop to take place, skipping the code in between. That is, whatever is left in that particular iteration, it is going to skip, and the next iteration is going to begin. And for the for loop, continue statement causes the conditional test and increment portions of the loop to execute. And for the while and do while loops, continue statement causes the program control to check the conditional statements. As we know, in the do while loop, it is going to check at the end of the loop, and in the while loop, it is going to check prior to the statement execution. And when the break statement is encountered inside a loop, the loop is immediately terminated and program control resumes at the next statement following the loop. That is, the current execution of the whole loop body is going to be terminated wholly, and it can be used to terminate a case in the switch statement also, whereas we cannot use continue in a switch statement. Then one dimensional array, we know that an array is nothing but a collection of variables which belong to the same data type. So, we can also say that it is an array is a linear homogeneous data structure. Linear is because it is going to be allocated with contiguous memory locations, sequential locations, and then homogeneous data structure is it contains similar data types, whether it could be an integer array or it could be a floating point array or a character array, so on. And a one dimensional array is always referenced by a single subscript. So, an integer array contains a list of only integer data. How do we declare an array? Is we specify the data type, the array name, and since it is a single dimensional array, we are going to specify one subscript, that is the size of the array or the number of elements in the array. So, an example, int list of 10. So, this declares an array called list which consists of 10 integers. Then explain different operations on an array. There are different types of operations that could be carried on an array, that is deletion. Deletion is nothing but removal of elements from an array. So, this kind of operation could be performed. And insertion is we could add new elements to the array. So, addition of elements could be performed. And searching, that is we have a key value with us and we could search whether this key belongs to that array. So, searching is possible. So, as we saw in our session, we looked into the linear search technique in order to search for a particular element with whether it would exist in the array or not. And then merging, that is given two arrays, we could always merge these two arrays and combine them into one single array. Or sorting, the elements in the array could be arranged in a sequential order, either in the ascending or the descending order. So, sorting, we saw an example of the bubble sort. Then this says about the initialization of 1 and 2 dimensional arrays with examples. We have several examples over here. I will just discuss one or two amongst them. That is, int list of 4 is equal to, we are assigning all the values for the 4 elements that we have declared in the list. So, here explicitly we are initializing all the elements of the array to 0. This could also be done in a shortcut manner such as this, that is int list of 4 is equal to 0. So, here as I am assigning 0 to one of these elements, what about the rest of the elements? The rest of the elements by default again will be assigned or initialized with a 0 value. So, here implicitly we are initializing all the elements of the array to 0. And then int num of 5 is equal to 10, 20. That is, we have 5 element array called number, which is of type integer, and we are assigning only 2 values over here. So, what about the rest 3 values? The rest 3 values automatically are going to be set to 0. And here in this case, int sequence, that is, I am not specifying any size of the array over here, but we are initializing some values. So, the size of the array will be derived from the number of values that have been assigned over here. So, here we have 4 values. So, now the size of this array would now become 4. Similar to that, you have the character array. Character array, as I told you, the end character would always be a \0. Here, since it is, we are assigning single characters, we need to specify that explicitly, that is \0 should be given as a part of it. So, that is why character name, where the size is not specified, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters that has been assigned. So, the size of this name array would be 5. And we have the 2-dimensional array that could be assigned, that could be initialized in this manner, that is int mat2 of 2. Now, see that it is a 2-dimensional array as it has 2 subscripts, the row subscript and the column subscript. So, here it is been initialized with values 2, 4, 1, 3, and you see the parentheses that have been enclosed in this manner. In the last session, we had already discussed that if we include these parentheses, it always means that it represents the corresponding rows. So, here this would become the first row and this would become the second row. So, this would be our matrix form, and then int a of 2, 3 is equal to 1, 2, 2. We have 2 cross 3 matrix, means that 6 elements totally, but here we are assigning only 3 values. So, what about the rest 3 values? All of them should be assigned with 0, but in which location of that particular 2-dimensional array these zeros should appear, that is being given in this particular brace, in the way that we have used these braces. That is, we have used a brace for 1, which means that this is the first row elements. So, in the first row elements we have given just 1 and the number 1. So, the rest elements are taken as 0, and the second row elements are 2, 2. So, the first 2 elements have been given in the second row, the third element by default would be set to 0. Similar to that, we have float b 3, 2 with only 3 values we have assigned, that is for the first row, the second row and the third row. So, here by default all the other elements of the matrix would also be set to 0. Then how do you differentiate between a single dimensional and a 2-dimensional array? A single dimensional array is used to represent and store data in a linear form. Array having only one subscript variable is called a 1-dimensional array, and it is also called a linear array. And a multi-dimensional array is an array of a single dimensional arrays, that is, it is an array of arrays. So, as you see, in case of a 2-dimensional array, it could be the first row is one array, the second row is one array, that is what we mean to say. It is an array of single dimensional arrays. Most common form of multi-dimensional array is a 2-dimensional array, that is a matrix, and 2D array has 2 subscript variables to refer or access the elements, and the way in which we are going to declare and use these 1D and 2D arrays are again given, that is data type, the array name and the array size in case of 1-dimensional, and in case of 2-dimensional we are using these 2 subscripts, that is to mention the row and column size and the respective examples for this. I have some examples over here. Just look into this code and tell me what the output would be. You have a switch statement over here and certain case values. So, if you just look into this switch statement, we have a switch expression, but this expression is not a valid expression as we see, because it should be a single constant value that could be compared with the case values over here. So, as we have given a 5/4/3, it does not match into any of a particular integer value. So, that is why this is an error. And another switch statement, you have I is equal to 10 and I is used as a switch expression. So, the value 10 here we have, and we are trying to match with these case values 1, 10, 11. So, 10 is here. So, it is going to match with this one. So, the control is being transferred to this particular statement. So, what is that statement? Printf I is equal to 10, and after this we do not have a break statement. So, the control is seeping into the next case value. So, print I is equal to 11 also happens. After this we have a break statement. So, when we execute this program, these two statements would be printed. And how many times will this loop body execute in the following loop? That is, you have the value of x is equal to 4 and the value of y is equal to 50, and every time within this do while loop we are incrementing the value of x by 8. So, how many times do you think that this is going to be executed? It is going to be executed for 6 times. How do you justify that it is going to be executed 6 times? That is, the first time the value of x would be 12, that is 4 plus 8, it would be 12, and we are checking the condition 12 less than 50 it is. So, it gets back to the loop body. So, that keeps happening until we come across this value, that is x is equal to 44. So, as it is a do while loop, even if the condition has crossed, the loop body is being executed. So, that is why it is going to be executed for 6 times. Similar to this, you have another program code. That is, for x is equal to 5, x less than 40, x plus equal to 5. That is, every time the increment is going to happen by 5. So, the number of times this loop body is going to be executed is 7 times. Just recheck on it and find out why it is 7 times. And now we have a while loop over here to perform certain processing. Could you just change this particular while block and replace it with a for loop, and just find out which is going to be much easier, whether the while loop or the for loop. Just have a look at it. We are saying while x less than or equal to 10, we are performing y is equal to x square and printing those two values x and y, and incrementing the control variable, that is x plus equal to 3. So, here at some point of time this condition has to be met. So, the same thing could be written by making use of a for loop, that is, for x is equal to 1, the termination condition is x less than or equal to 10 we had given. So, the same thing we are specifying, and every time the x value is going to be incremented by 3, and we are printing the value of x and y. So, this way maybe you can recheck upon yourself, that is, if you are completely aware about using the decision making structures and the loop controls, then definitely programming is going to be a very easy task. So, just concentrate on this and try to understand the concept and logic. Happy programming. Thank you.